Well, you know, the story being, you know, for the want of a spring, you should have a spring winding machine. So, you know, about a year ago or so, I got this at an auction sale. It was an Amish auction, if I may mention that. I was quite impressed with this operation. But Henry was the person on the sale bill there, I think, was in the metal department. They could make anything, look to me like. But I got this one. This is a Carlson-spring-coiler. Clinton, Arkansas is a badge number on this one. And it's a manual machine. But and this is what produces this. So but the sale was an encouragement to me daily as to the idea that you actually can do something. So and a couple of these springs right here. I'm not in the spring business. Don't misundertook that I'm making springs here. I'm just gonna make one or two. I'm gonna send one down yonder to Florida. A couple of them, you know, try them if they work okay, and if they will pass. I'm gonna send them down there. And but what I did is I done turned that manual right there and just put it in that chuck, and then I put that screw in the chuck jaw threaded part, cut a little notch underneath it. You know, I done cut the bench out there and got it mounted up solid and everything. This right here, that wire, that's 100 thousandths right there, the size on that music wire. But the principle is it goes around in the rack and gear pinion, whatever that gear ratio is. Then you put the angle on this at such a degree that it pushes that table down that way. And I think I'm maxing it out. So to that end, I got that wire stuck underneath that thing about that far over, and I got about this much gap right here so that I can wind a couple of dead coils on the get-go to make it come out straight. And I run this wire one time through the straightener. It was about a 6-inch coil or so when I start with it, and now it's about a 36. But you capture that over yonder, so you come around. Okay, now see, it's not make contact down here, so it's winding a dead coil right yonder. Okay, now it's taking off here, so it's making a coil. So let's pay attention. Winding a spring is not to be toyed with. Well, the early thinking, as per the blueprint, yeah, we shouldn't bypass that. The early drawing was yeah, okay, we can get everything on the table now. Was to cut this out of a large chunk of steel. Well, you know, second thinking was I would just make a mandrel that size. This is 1 inch 1018 bar stock with the end turned down. It's got a set screw here, and I faced this. I tell you what I did. I saved these from some time back, but what they are, they're eccentrics for tightening up a bearing onto a shaft collar. but I used that right here and faced it off to the diameter, and then I drilled a hole in there. And what I was, this is the, I'm thinking that this is what the kit, the reason I have this out, I think this came as an accompanying kit, maybe. It looks to be shop built, maybe, but these don't. These look to be like mass produced. And there's a system of them, appears to be, size and such. So I use one of these as my in-hand example. And they're drilled and they have a hardened pin across there. They have an undercut. They have a tang on them. And this is all, that's all one piece, see? They turned it out of full-size stock. And that was my intention starting with. And that was too much, I could go about it a different way, which is, I ended up with this. Okay, when I wound the spring onto this mandrel, it produced a spring this size when it sprung back. So, that being too small. But I do know what size spring that mandrel will produce now. And what I did right there is when I drilled that hole across that way, I broke the drill bit off, and then I ground a little tooth and put it right back here. Okay, I have just used that freely so far to wind some springs, and it functions as if it was mounted solid. Works good. So to that end, I got a piece of, this is what it looked like. And that's 1 1/8 across there. That 1 1/8 inch bar stock, 6 inches long, put in the lathe and turned this tang down here. And then that's that collar, another one that actually fit the 1 1/8. And I put that on here like that. And I'll show it to you. And tighten this up. Okay. And then I put this in the lathe and I let this rest against the chuck jaw. So it would not have a tendency to turn if it need be. But once you wind a spring of 100 thousandths on this arbor, it'll produce a spring that is, this is a real nice spring here. It's just too short, too many coils, but really nice. And the 1 1/2 inches is what I needed, and that's what that is right there. Now, but, and this is the spring we're copying right here. Okay, that's one we're copying. The 6 coils, 1 1/2 inches. About 3 3/4 inches long. And the reason for this spring is I'll trim them off right there, and that'll be one. Well, that'll be pretty good right there. That's 6 coils right there and 2 end wraps. But I only needed one for that engine. And the way this, well, Nelson Brothers over yonder, not this one, over yonder, that Nelson Brother engine project, the way that's ended up, that's kind of ended up going back to be a 3-engine package. So I'll probably pass that on. And we'll see what happens to it, but it's too good to part out. The other two engines could easily be, they could be restored and should be, not to be parted out. So, but the springs is thus, and if you compare it to the one, the original one right there, just broke in the middle, size and all, then this is pretty much the exact copy of it. Pretty close. And then this one's a little bit shorter. Okay, and the reason being that this might be a good thing, if you were ordering springs, this might be a little bit too tight. You know, it may go sideways on the rocker arm on that Nelson Brothers always, or cocked around too much for some reason. So sometimes a shorter spring is to your advantage as long as it pushes the push rod back to latch out is all the function of that, all that is. Push rod return spring. It's not a exhaust valve spring. But anyways, you know, that's about all the springs that's about all I'm not gonna wind more springs of this size. Just, you know, but I am gonna get a couple in the mail there going south. Oh yeah. Again, this size mandrel produce this size spring. Spring back. That's pretty neat. It functions. That's all it's supposed to do. So there's one. And we'll try some. Oh. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. About them springs for that Nelson Brothers engine over there. Spring in particular is the push rod return spring. Works on your exhaust valve up there, being an exhaust valve spring, and then this here covers that over to be a spring for the exhaust rocker arm, which in turn pushes the push rod back. So carrying on to get on past the spring winding. The well, you know, I'm all the time talking about turning something in for grade, but I would turn this. I've got a couple of springs over there now that I modified. We'll go talk about that in a minute. But you know, to wind a good spring, you know, out of the group here, I would turn these two in for example of the capability of that spring winder over there. And you know, as far as springs goes, referring to that mechanic handbook back there, that's a pretty good spring, no matter who wounded it. And this is the spring we're replicating, the spring on that rocker arm on that Nelson Brothers over there. So, yeah, you know, I done the measurements on it and everything there. It's 1.5 inches out yonder, and it's about 3 3/4, 3.5 inches long, and it has 6 coils. This spring is not as long as that spring. These are not. These are just. That's just some test windings to understand what I actually needed to do with different spacing. What was the difference in these is coil spacing. But I think if you look in the book over there, what you want to do, if I point this out here and take credit for it, you want the end of the spring to come in line with each other most of the time. And then where it meets right there and takes off over there, and if you look at it it's, you know, nice and uniform. I'm going to submit that in there for grade. That's 100 thousandths on that wire. The end is cut with a chisel, and I don't have a strong enough cutter. I own up to it. I need a tool, so I've been cutting with a chisel on a round bar, and that's the waste part, you know. But it is a sharp edge. It needs to be seen to, I'm sure. And the numbers that's in the machinery handbook back there is also you need to know it. That's all I'm gonna say about that. But let's go over and we'll talk about a spring over yonder and the reason that I did this to it. Okay. I'll show you what I ended up with. It's a Nelson Brothers engine. It has a McLeod badge on it there up there in Canada. A serial number on the flywheel back there to the engine. Webster Magneto, it's a M. You see I have a spring right here because this my push rod spring's missing. Push that all back so that it'll latch out in there. So I put this helper spring on here. Well, we don't need it no more. So then that sets this push rod free. If it don't have the spring. If the spring's up here, then it holds tension on it. So, and this is what I made. This is the end product. So actually one end has about a half a coil extra because I wanted a little extra length. Not sure why I wanted that. But the way you, and it's got a valve spring already in there. I didn't make them. It's a little light. I should. I'll make some, but not today. I'm not making no more springs for a while. So you put that all up in there like that, and the best way I found it is to spin it around to where that it finds its where it finds its where it wants to be at. And I think on that spring where it was snipped off is down there at the bottom of that rocker arm, you know, kind of captures it in there. So you know, I'm gonna say that spring's good to go right there. You know, and that's all it does is it sits there all day long and do this. So anyways, this one right here, now these springs right here, I'll tell you something about this. And not to get, this is the one that was just on there. It's a very good spring, music wire. But what dictates how long this spring should be is how long your valve stem is. If someone has put a valve in it at some point and it's longer or shorter, then to take up the space right here, we'll put this tighter or further away. But let's put this spring in there, and I'll show it to you. Okay. So see, that would be the position for that spring right there, because that loop right there is caught in that little lip in there. Oh yeah. You know, it works. And actually the way it does work, I'll hold in on this intake valve and show you when it comes around, this push rod moves. It's the only function it has is come up here. Okay, when this comes up here and all this stuff happens and your valve is opening and closing, then this right here is going to return to where it's free play in relationship to your valve timing. So on this engine, on this engine here, actually I don't care for that. So yeah, I think for sure if normal valve opening function quite well. And this one right here, I did have the two coils to the head and the open end up here to the front. It's according to where your rocker arm setting and how deep it's cut in the back there. You may want to put it that way to let it find its equilibrium, let's say. But anyways, I get these in the mail tomorrow. Yeah, going down Florida way. From here in Middle Tennessee. Geographical center or something. Y'all leave a comment, thumbs up or something. Pass it on.